Travel and Things, in association with Ruggedware, Real People, Real Clothing, Real Solutions, presents In Conversation With. I'm your host, David Batsoffen, and my guest today is co-author of this brand new book from HPH Publishing, Safari Secrets, The Big Five. And today I'm talking to Will Taylor. Will, good morning. Welcome to you.
Hello, David. Nice to see you again.
It's always good to see me, isn't it?
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway.
All right, so the new book, Safari Secrets, The Big Five, by yourself and Gerald. What was your contribution to the book?
My contribution was, first of all, Gerald and I, when we do projects, we kind of research them together and then come up with concepts. So we're both involved in that. And then once we've got that down, it really divides into photography and writing. Mm-hmm. And so Gerald does the majority of the photography, although very grudgingly every now and then he allows me a couple of photographs. And I do most of the writing, obviously all of the research and the, just the putting together of the book is also something that Gerald and I are both involved in. Mm-hmm. We do rely quite heavily on our designers and our publishers to do that, but we like to have input on that. So I'm mostly the sort of scientific writing side of things, and Gerald's mostly the photographic side of things.
Okay.
And
because
this one was,
if he allows you grudgingly, as you said, to have a photograph or two in the book, do you grudgingly allow him maybe a word or two, the end of maybe a full stop on page 63 or something?
Yeah, he cannot throw the odd thing in, but actually, funny enough, on this book we kind of divided and conquered a little bit because and we can chat about this later, but it was interesting coming out of lockdown and coming out of sort of 2 years of nobody doing anything, in the way that very much the book industry and the publishing industry had changed. We kind of felt like people wanted a little bit more from a book than just beautiful pictures and some sort of flowery prose. So we decided to both kind of contribute to what the book offers the reader, rather than just something that you can page to and put down. It's something you can go back to and look up and learn stuff from. And my side of it, with my background and sort of the conservation world and zoology and being in the bush all my life, was the sort of tracking and finding and learning about and the animal behavior side of things, which Gerald has skill in too. And then he did the photography side, which I have skill in too. So we just decided to divide and conquer. And so in the book, there's a lot of, exactly. You'll see how there's these little boxes, and some of them have green, which are usually mine, and some of them are yellow, which are Gerald's. But it's just so that everybody knows, I did help Gerald a little bit with the captions.
Who chose the images? The images, of course, in a book like this, make or break, because it's a book on wildlife photography. And if you've got sort of cell phone photographs, or even worse, iPad photographs in here, people are going to go, no, we can mess this up by ourselves. We don't have to pay money to have two professionals show us how to mess it up. The images are spectacular, Will. They really and truly are. The book is beautiful. It stands alone as a coffee table book. If you get the deluxe version, I believe it comes with 4 legs, and you can turn the book into a coffee table. If you are so desirous, you can sit on it in the bush. But the images specifically, and I know that Gerald says that buffaloes are difficult to photograph, but buffaloes in mud, you can't go wrong.
Absolutely. No, thank you for those kind words. Gerald obviously was fully in charge of the photographic input of it and what he wanted. And then once he chose, and as you know how this goes, being a photographer yourself, but you start off with about 10 to the power 3 images, and you slowly whittle it down to about 1 million, and then from there you go down to how many can fit in the book. And so Gerald, what is amazing about Gerald is that he constantly evolves his photography. And this is pretty much the first book where we've had this high end mirrorless sort of, with the evolution of technology, where we've got this high tech sort of imagery, which, as you know, again, as a photographer, has been quite a change. And with it, he's been able to sort of push the limits of some of his work. So in this one, for example, quite a lot of low light, even nighttime shots.
Yeah, well, if you look at the cover is stunning.
Yeah, we just thought that was just such a powerful image to put on the cover. And as you know, such a difficult image to take.
People don't realize this. This looks like a simple image. This is not. This is a lot of prep and making sure that settings are right. When I spoke to Gerald about the book, we spoke about that. Specifically, if you've gone out, done a shoot like this, and then in the morning, you forget to change your settings. And it's normally those early morning, the first early morning shots are always the best. And then you're always on the wrong setting, you know, from the night before 3200 ISO and it's just over, you've blown your whole morning shot type of thing.
Yeah. No, it's, you know, he obviously has a lot of experience, but he also is meticulous about how he gets it. And don't tell him I said this, but he's extremely meticulous, and obviously spends a lot of time in the bush on certain situations. And so, as you know, you get presented with that one time that you can take this image, and particularly with that image, and I'm sure he talked to you about it. But you know, you've got a bunch of lines when you don't often see that many lines walking together in that kind of formation. You got one shot of it.
Yeah, it's literally.
And so he did remarkably well there. And so I think a lot of the images, I think he wanted to display a lot of his new work, and then we also had the challenge of getting pictures in there that spoke to the text, because the text is quite anecdotal.
That was going to be my next question to you. But before we get there, when we met a few weeks ago at the launch of the book, I asked you what your favorite photograph in the book was, and I remember it was that. Now,
absolutely.
The initial thing that caught my attention was the buffalo's tongue, but then you realize that this poor fellow has no horns left. He's been giving it horns over the course of his year. But I still would not like to be the pack of lions that try and take this fellow down, because he will give you a right good go for your money at the end of the day. They fight to the
absolutely, guys. Absolutely, and that's and there's a number of reasons why I picked that shot when you asked me that, because actually it's a funny thing, but no one's ever asked me that, and I was like, that's an interesting one. And there, as you know, there's some beautiful images, and there's some beautiful images. So I would be more inclined to choose a beautiful shot of, there's a shot of the leopard lying in the tree with the sun flare over its head, which is again a very technically difficult picture. But that old Dagga boy, that old buffalo bull, you know, there's something about that picture, because there's a lot of stuff in it, as you've just so rightly pointed out. The guy's worn his horns away. You know, he's probably been bitten by flies his whole life. That's why he's lying in the mud. And, you know, his horns have either been broken off in fights or rubs against trees and weakened by flies and maggots. And now he's just got a skull cap on his head. You know, he's got that little pink tongue sticking out, and those droopy ears, and those eyes that look at you, as you said, you know, like they owe you money, which, you know, is Robert Ruick's famous quote. But a buffalo are also notoriously difficult to photograph, because they're just not beautiful creatures, and they're just a plain drab, one color, monochromatic, big, solid, monolithic mass of grumpiness, you know. So there's all that goes into it, and I feel like that shot maybe is the best shot I've ever seen of a Dagga boy, and maybe the best shot I've ever seen of a buffalo, even though it's ugly in the extreme, but it personifies everything about a buffalo.
As I said about buffalo, a field guide told me many years ago that buffalo always look at you as if you owe them money. And now I can't look at a herd of buffaloes without thinking, all right, I sent the check. It's in the mail, guys. Just let me take the picture and leave.
Yeah, you should always, when you're stalking buffalo, you should always have cash in your pocket, because I don't believe in the check mailing thing.
So that image aside, and buffalo aside, do you have, you mentioned, that's where I was going, you mentioned that the pictures had to speak to the text. Did it not work the other way around? Did you not write the book and say to Gerald, listen, here's a book, pick me some photographs?
Yeah, you know, interesting that it did work. It did work that way to a large extent. You know, I had, funnily enough, certain images in mind as well that Gerald and I have been working so long together, we know each other's photographs quite well, and there was quite a lot of new work. So you'll see there's some older photographs in the book that it's just hard to capture something that you got so perfectly another time. I think is one of me with a drag mark. That was taken so many years ago, but it's one of the most perfect drag marks, leopard drag mark that I've seen. And, you know, a group of giraffes standing and all looking in one direction, which, you know, quite often you'll get one looking this way and one looking the other way, but that was my image, by the way.
So there are your two images, one drag mark and a picture of giraffe.
Yeah. But anyway, it's yeah, so it did work that way to a certain extent. Yeah, we chose the beautiful images, the images of the animals that we thought were going to take you. And that's the other thing that I think we talked about briefly, was that we like people to feel when they're looking at the book as if it's a progression of a game drive, or it's, you know, you're there. It's not just, you know, this beautiful, you know, animal standing in a pristine environment. It's the environment itself gets in there. You'll see a lot of our leopard shots are either action shots or you know, leopards in the environment, and very few just plain straight up portrait shots.
Yeah, because you know, at the end of the day, everybody, and I don't mean this disparagingly, but everybody believes that they are wildlife photographers, and there are photographs and there are photographs, and this book is photographs.
Well,
if you ever wanted to aspire to be a proper one, you know, I've always said to many, well, not many, I think I said it to Gerald, when I grow up, I want to be a proper wildlife photographer. And there are people like Gerald and like yourself, Grant Atkinson and Greg DeToy, who I look up to as my photographic mentors. And this book, I think, just says that to people who are looking to up their game, because everybody with a cell phone on the back of a vehicle now believes they're wildlife photographers. And they post them on Facebook and people go, ooh, oh, that's a wonderful picture. And I want a Facebook button that goes, no, it's rubbish and it's out of focus.
There's good and bad to that. I mean, I think the good thing about the technology and the advancement of technology in the cell phone is that everyone is a wildlife photographer, and you know, everyone does think that they're, so that's good. It's frustrating when you know that stuff is not good, and people think it, but that's each to his own. And you know, I'm so thrilled for someone to be proud of a blurry picture of an impala's backside. You know, if it's an image and a memory that they take with them, and you know, there's that. Then you get this other end of the scale, you know, professional photographers like yourself and Gerald, and who've been honing that craft and working on that craft for so long, that everything is, you know, everything is different and everything's good. And that's what makes it so difficult to choose shots. You know,
I was about to say, it must be like, you know, killing your children. You've got all these images, and then you go, all right, now I've got to let some of you go. Do you hand that job over to a third party, somebody like the guys at HPH, and just say to them, look, we can't choose. Here, 75 leopard images, we only need 3. You guys pick them.
Well, you know, it is teamwork, and you mentioned HPH and Heinrich in particular, who's, as you know, a spectacular wildlife photographer in his own right, Heinrich van den Berg. What tends to happen is the 3 of us have a very long boozy lunch, and then and we discuss what it is, and then Gerald sends a literally, I mean, you know, just sacks full of photographs, and we start honing away at it, and then we choose the images we want, and then Heinrich gets on with the design, which is extremely good at, and suddenly you see 2 pictures that are fantastic pictures in their own right, but they don't work on the page together. You know, this one facing this one, and this is too dry, and that one's too green, or this is, you know, and so, you know, you've got to hone through that. So as you know, it is a brutal process, because you've got to, you know, Gerald lies twisting and turning in his sheets at night, wishing that the one picture was in the book, and I'm like, no, it can't be in.
So how long does a book like this take to put together? You know, people see it on the shelf. But they don't realize that it's months, if not years, in the making. It's the same with wildlife documentaries. People like Derek and Beverly Joubert, and people go into the bush and go, we want to see a kill every 15 minutes because we saw this documentary and now they're kills. And you go, yeah, but that documentary took 5 to 7 years to get that 48 minutes of footage. in a book of this nature, how long does that take? How long have these images taken to get together?
So that's a multi-layered answer to that very simple question. And you know, I don't know if you know, I think you do, but Gerald and I did, we made wildlife documentaries as well, and we produced over 20 wildlife specials for various broadcasts around the world, like, you know, Discovery Channel, National Geographic, BBC. And when we did that, it was, we were talking about this as well as the old days of film. You know, we were shooting with an AMI SR2 and changing film in the middle of the Serengeti Marsh. And so we would then often spend, you know, 6 months in the field, not all at one time given, but, you know, maybe 3 weeks at a time, 2 weeks at a time, 4 weeks at a time. And we usually used to split it where we did about 6 to 7 months of shooting, and the rest was editing and putting the film together. And that was my job as well.
Yeah.
So that's how I came to go to America, because I went and did a lot of my editing over there. And, you know, so that has carried over into our books, where Gerald's pretty much, you know, the visual thing, and I'm the writer, storyteller. Okay. But with that, we have 25, almost 30 years, I hate to say it, of experience together in the bush doing these things. And a book like this, from concept, and it was an unusual one, because we started talking with Heinrich about a completely different book, and then here came, you know, lockdown, COVID, and all of that. Yeah. And when we got to the other side of it, the book that we were talking about made absolutely no sense. And Safari Secrets was, it's just, you know, Safari Secrets was kind of a ping, because it's catchy, you know. It's like, what's the secret? I want to know what the secret is. Then you put a picture like that on the cover, and they're like, okay, what is the secret? And then there are some good secrets divulged in there. Yeah. So to answer your question, I would say there's 25 years of experience in the book, and there is probably, to gather all the images together, there are some images that are from many years ago, but once we had an eye on it, I think it took Gerald about 3 or 4 months to get the fresh stuff that he needed. And then we relied a little bit on some of our older stuff. And so I would say the project has been going for 4 years, but I would say if you just took the writing and the photography that we did, it has taken probably upwards of 2 years to complete.
Are you already working on the next one, Will?
We are working on a couple of books. Again, we've been lucky enough to work in some areas that are really, you know, dear to our heart, one of which, as you know, is Mala Mala. And so we're working on a kind of the definitive book of Mala Mala at the moment. And then we're also really interested in certain natural phenomena that are taking place, that if we're lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. And at the moment, it's not known to many people, but there's an area that you probably know, but a lot of people might not, call the Kleseri. And in the Kleseri at the moment, there's a super pride of lions. There's about 36 to 38 animals in the pride.
I've sat with that pride on more than one occasion. It is unbelievably awesome. It really is. I agree. It's a remarkable sight. And we've worked on one of these prides before. The very first movie we did was called Royal Blood for the Discovery Channel, and there's a pride on the Serengeti Marsh that was just under 40 animals. And that's remarkable. It's like watching a herd of buffalo come towards you at night. It is indeed.
So
you don't know where to point your camera. That's the problem.
Exactly, and that's what's going to be the challenge about doing a book on a super pride like that, and also the Kleseri area. But we have been chatting about it. It's not by any means, you know, something that we have squared away yet. But we're happy to go and do that and work on that, because it's just remarkable to have that kind of opportunity. And you know, it's something that's got to happen very quickly, because, as you know, lion dynamics
can change in a heartbeat. They really can. Will, a question that I love asking authors, or two questions actually. One is, when do you know to write the end? And is that difficult to go, all right, that's it, hit send it to the publisher, done, dusted, we'll come back, they'll give us edits or not, and we'll let it go? And second, so do you know when the end is the end, or do you still push it a little bit further?
I think I'm lucky enough to kind of know when the end is the end. And I'm lucky enough to have, you know, I've been involved in academic zoology and conservation and most of my life. And so I've got to know what my kind of skills are, and I tend to think a lot in my head before I put it down.
Okay.
It equates to two things. One is, I always say to people, like when you're on a radio, when you're in the bush and you're talking to people on the radio, think about what you're going to say before you pick up the mic. Otherwise, you're going to say, there's a leopard. No, it's just infuriating to me. And secondly, I'm very much a flow writer. So once it starts speaking to me and I know what I want to say and I put it down, I very seldom go back and make major changes. Obviously, go back and do a lot of grammatical changing in that. Yeah. But so, for example, the book like this, just to answer your question, a book like this, once I got to the end of each chapter and I knew that it had to be concise because it's not a big book, you know, it was pretty easy to say no, and that's the end of it.
Okay. The other one is, you walk into exclusive books. This is on the shelf, but it's that way. So that's all you see of the book. Do you, Will Taylor, pick up the book, turn it around so that it's sitting, so that people can see it, and then looking around to see who else is in close proximity, go, wow, look, it's a new book by Hinde Taylor. I wonder what it's like.
Every single time. Yes.
At least you're honest. Everybody else says they don't.
I do it shamelessly, and what I actually do when I do it is I accidentally drop a couple of books on the floor, making sure they're plastic wrapped, of course.
Yeah.
And then go, oh dear, and make a bit of a scene. And hopefully someone in the store comes over and I go, well, that's my book, you know. And then it's funny though, because they remember that. And if you walked into their store, a quick little story. There's a small shop in the Hoedspruit Airport at Eastgate.
Yes.
And it's a wonderful little shop. And for some reason, every single one of our books is in there, even the ones that are out of print. And,
wow.
And so I got a late start in the reproductive stakes, and I've got a little 8-year-old boy. And we were in Hoedspruit a couple of weeks ago, and he walked in there and he came out and he said, shouted at the top of his voice, hey, everybody, my dad's books are in here. Come in for a signing. Like, this is the one time I didn't put the books out.
Did anybody step up and take up his offer?
Well, strangely enough, you know, I think people that are in those kind of places are extremely interested in wildlife. And so, yeah, people did. The lady who was running the register at the store asked for a picture with the book and said that she'd like to have it up there. That was fun. It was fun.
Well, I wish you guys the very best. The book is called Safari Secrets, The Big Five, but it's not only the big five, because they're the little five and the ugly five and the shy five that are in here. The only animal that's not in here is the pangolin, because it doesn't.
I knew you were going to say this. I knew this was coming up. Yes, we want your pangolin picture, please.
No, it's just that where does the pangolin fit in? I would have put it in with the shark five, with the aardvark and the porcupine. But I know that you guys have done the research and it's not part of the shark five. So we'll leave it at that. The book is published by HPH Publishing. It's available now. And if you're a photographer, you should have it in your collection. If you know a photographer, buy it and give it to them as a gift. They will be eternally grateful. Will Taylor, thank you for being a guest on In Conversation With. It was wonderful to actually meet you in person. When we did the launch, it was even nicer to be able to have this chat with you. Thank you so very much for your time and the expertise that you put into the book.
Thank you so much, David. It's been a pleasure.